Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this live stream session. I really, really appreciate everyone's time. We live in a super busy world, so I'm just absolutely honored. Um, I'm also going to start with the fact that I'm a little nervous because this is not a conversation. Like it feels like me speaking to the void rather than speaking with another person. But we'll see. We'll do our best here. So my name is Nicole Zisman. I am a fashion and digital designer. And my practice addresses kind of the complexity of stratified identity, the reality of its intersections within culture, and also the political consequences of visual assimilation. I'm Ashkenazi Jewish. My parents and really my whole family are Venezuelan immigrants to the US. So that's kind of where I grew up. I grew up in California. I was really, really, really lucky to grow up there. And then I'm London based now. I graduated from Central St. Martin's BA Fashion Print in 2019. Um, so I guess in this live stream, I want to discuss two things. I want to talk about Capsule itself, and also a little bit about my practice. Basically, Capsule is sort of a new, smaller collection that I've produced for Helsinki Fashion Week. It kind of takes sort of the visuality and research behind my BA collection at St. Martin's and turns it into a sort of a body of usable products, so consumable clothing that can be worn, but also with sustainability, namely circularity, at the forefront of the collection. So everything has been designed with the ultimate goal of circularity within Capsule. The digital presentation is on Friday, the 31st of July, so exactly a week from now, and it's at 6:15 p.m. Eastern European time, so actually pretty similar to right now. If you're based in London, it's at 4:15 p.m., and then if you're based in California, it's at 8:15 in the morning. So yeah, if you can get up for it, that would be great. It is a digital presentation of a real collection that will be produced and sold on a pre-order basis. So just to kind of clarify some questions, because it does get a bit confusing with kind of trying to understand what a digital show is, and is it showing real products or is it, showing digital products? So the digital assets are products in themselves, and the real clothes are products in themselves. So the digital assets are up for purchase as well through Helsinki Fashion Week. The real clothing will be put into production. Sort of timing wise, it's a little bit TBD, especially due to COVID, but we're sort of hoping to have it available and ready for pre-order within a few months. It'll be presented within the Helsinki Fashion Week Digital Village in 3D. This is a really, really special way to show fashion because the Digital Village actually allows users to interact with the clothing and the space itself. So press and buyers and public will have their own asset libraries in the Digital Village to be able to try on the clothes and kind of inform what it is really, which is really interesting. So this capsule collection, the intention is to directly challenge brands of all sizes. Design and visuality within Capsule are directly informed by sort of what I believe is the real definition of the word sustainability as able to be sustained. So I approach creative practice with a mindset that for something to be sustainable in its very definition, it kind of has to do one of two things. Number one, it has to pull rubbish and pollutants out of the environment and kind of recirculate them back into human spaces, or it needs to start and finish in the ground. So it needs to be plant-based and compostable. So every piece in Capsule is either entirely compostable or made from 100% recycled or reclaimed materials, which is something that I'm really, really proud to say that we've achieved. I can't talk about this capsule collection without mentioning my sponsors and collaborators, because without them, it wouldn't have been financially possible. The goals of it wouldn't have been able to be achieved. The learning process that I've undergone to kind of realize this collection wouldn't have been what it was. This collection was made possible with the support of natural fiber welding in full sponsorship of Miram Plant Leather. So Miram Plant Leather is a totally plant-based, recyclable and compostable leather alternative. So it contains absolutely no plastic, and this is huge in its circularity. This collection also features a collaborative look with the Feminist Internet. So the Feminist Internet are a really, really special collective. They're also London-based. Some of my best friends are in it. And the Feminist Internet is as a collective, they basically strive to make the internet a more inclusive and safe space for women and minorities through creative practice. The collaborative look from the Feminist Internet and myself, both the digital and the real, will have all the proceeds donated directly to the Abya Fund. So this will support Indigenous groups in South America fighting extractive industries and the climate crisis. I also have to specify that this collection, like every other project I have undertaken and will undertake, never uses unpaid labor. So kind of my personal view regarding creative projects is that kind of no budget, no project. So I really believe that if we cannot sustain it, then it needs to go. So I do also want to run through, this is kind of like the transparency aspect of this talk. I want to give as much information as possible about the collection. I'm also taking questions. I only have like half an hour, so I'm going to try and be as specific as I can. The first look as well was a collaboration with 3D designer Martina Ponzoni. So the production status of that one in terms of putting it into reel is pending. So it's more to do with the way we designed it as a digital look. It potentially might not translate sustainably into reel. So that's kind of what we're sort of looking at now is as to whether or not we'll put it into production. I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen because I have up a preview of a few looks from the collection, which I was allowed to show, which I'm excited about. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see. This look is sort of the second look in the collection. The top and the skirt are 100% recycled cotton supplied by Natural Fiber Welding as well, so they have also sponsored this look. All the threads are also cotton, so it's recycled pre-consumer cotton and then recyclable into sort of tencel and kind of other cellulosic materials after. The collaborative look with the Feminist Internet is a Miram Plant Leather dress, and so is this next look that I'm going to go ahead and show. I'm like really banking on this screen sharing working. So this dress, this little mini dress, is a Miram Plant Leather dress. And the tights are actually supplied by Swedish Stockings. So Swedish Stockings are a stocking company. They're a hosiery company, really, that work with recycled nylon. And they also take back stockings to be recycled. So everything's fully circular. I had a discussion with Greg Stillman of Natural Fiber Welding just really a few minutes ago, and we discussed making the sort of the question of when you print on a plant leather, how does that sort of inform its behavior? Essentially, what we've had to do to make the dress and sort of all the printed Miram pieces compostable is we've had to comply with an EU regulation on compostability, which basically states that no more than 5% of an entire product that is intended to be compostable can be made of non-compostable materials. So in this situation, 95% of the garment has to be Miram plant leather, and then the other 5, or ideally less, would be ink. And within that 5%, each pigment, so for example, the spot white color that will have to be printed on the black, as well as the CMYK pigments, each one of those cannot exceed over 1%, basically, of the total non-compostable. So what I've had to do on my end as a print designer is kind of generate the images to be extremely light and kind of sort of render them so that they don't take a ton of ink to print. And I've done this by half toning them. So just in the interest of full transparency as to how I've managed to make a compostable printed garment, huge, huge amounts of gratitude to natural fiber welding. That's sort of a conversation we've had over the course of a few months because it was really important to me and really important to us as a partnership to have the circularity of the collection as kind of the primary, I guess, deciding factor of the visuality and design, if that makes sense. The other thing about so the fifth look as well is also made of Mirum plant leather. Most of the collection is Mirum. So the shoes as well, some of the accessories, like definitely the digital accessories made with Martina Ponzoni, they are, in the reel, they'll be sort of secondhand shoes covered in an e-waste cable leather alternative. So cables are something that are very, very difficult to recycle. It's something that's very location dependent. And so we're essentially treating it as rubbish. So the idea is to kind of pull rubbish out of the environment and kind of like put it back into human space, have it be sitting in somebody's home as a pair of shoes, pretty much. That's kind of the idea. Also, the care labels on all the garments are Mirum plant leather. They're just they're a material made of cork, actually. So they're different than, sorry, not Mirum plant leather, the Mirum patch material, because they are different than the leather. But those are also made in collaboration with the feminist internet. So that's, I'm really, really, really excited about all of my partnerships, all of my sponsorships. Huge thank you to Helsinki Fashion Week, specifically Maria and Evelyn. Just the amount of work these two have had to do to put this event together is really unbelievable. And to Skodemo Lab for digitizing everything and making sort of my responsibility in this kind of compared to theirs pretty minimal, I have to say. So it's kind of the intention with the capsule collection. So kind of why am I as a practitioner attracted to the digital? So my draw to the digital has to do with this question around identity. So I kind of first explored this interest in my BA collection at Central St. Martin's. I had built sort of an alternate Instagram persona that existed just purely in the digital space to kind of contrast with the real, which was my Jewish identity. And kind of sort of asking these questions of, do these two exist together? Can they exist together? And I kind of think that the answer to that is different with everyone. I do think at this point in time, we as a collectivity, as a humanity, are really, really experimenting with our digital identities as completely separate to our real identities. And it's also especially fun when your parents don't have access to Instagram, definitely. But that's kind of where I see digital fashion going as well, interestingly. I do think that when we start to sell digital garments, we're going to do this specifically to kind of add value to our digital lives. And I think that clothing itself, clothing in the real, will become a lot more utilitarian and a lot more focused on kind of being good for the climate crisis. So I do think that the way that we consume fashion is going to change. I think it'll be really interesting to see how the audience reacts to the digital village and the presentation of fashion in this kind of way. So it's all very, very much up in the air. I think that, yeah, it'll just be kind of interesting to see. The other thing I wanted to discuss was kind of making this capsule collection happen kind of both during lockdown and during the civil rights protests, because it's definitely been an interesting few months. In terms of lockdown, the whole collection was conceived when the UK went into lockdown. It was conceived in the months of April and May. This was at a period where we were kind of encouraged not to go outside. We were, the government advice was only go outside for essential services, exercise once a day, sort of essential, or I guess, yeah, sort of essential reasons to go out were things like, healthcare, food shops, sort of that kind of idea. And at this moment in time, it was a bit like, okay, how am I going to pattern cut without a cutting table, without space, without access to a studio? So the lockdown actually ended up being really, really beneficial in this way because I actually ended up generating all my patterns completely digitally. I did this using Adobe Illustrator. Um, and I found this to be a really, really amazing way to make patterns because it, first of all, eliminates the need for huge amounts of space. It eliminates the needs for huge amounts of paper and calico. The whole process of pattern making and toiling and then going back and making additions to the toile and then oftentimes constructing it over and over and over again. Um, those issues of enormous amounts of waste were completely avoided in this circumstance. And the challenge was really to make adjustments as mathematically accurately as possible, especially when building off a block that was sort of in PDF format. And it was really interesting because when I was working on the collaborative look with Martina, I would send her the flat files of the patterns and she would sort of render them on the 3D model and send it back to me, and I'd go, oh my God, that's not that's not what I wanted to happen here. And then it was a case of going back into Illustrator and adjusting the patterns through Illustrator and then sending them back and kind of seeing the growth of the garment happen digitally. That was super interesting for me. So I think the sustainability victory on that end was so great that I definitely am going to take that forward if I continue to create garments, hopefully when I continue to create garments after capsule. So that definitely was a huge victory. In terms of the civil rights protests, this in April and May, this was when everything was beginning to kick off in the United States with Black Lives Matter. It was created during a time where I had to undertake my own specific anti-racist work as a white passing person, the anti-racist work that was being asked of me by Black communities around the world. So that looks like, looking very honestly at the privilege that white passing Ashkenazi Jews have enjoyed post-Holocaust in the West that comes with the option to assimilate into whiteness. We're actively developing the understanding that this is a privilege that Black people and people of color will simply never have. We're looking at what opportunities we've been able to access when we've chosen to assimilate, how our safety and quality of life, how my safety and quality of life has improved in the US because of my ability to assimilate. But also it was coming at a time of looking at sort of the post-Holocaust Ashkenazi Jewish experience, so Jews that are of Euro heritage, not Black heritage or sort of Middle Eastern heritage. Though this experience, or though this, I should say, really this possibility of attaining white experiences depends fully and completely on assimilating out of our identities and is perpetually laced with physical and rhetorical anti-Semitism. So things like, shootings and stabbings in Jewish spaces, vandalism of Jewish homes and graves with swastikas, neo-Nazi demonstrations that the current American administration refuses to condemn, surprising anti-Jewishness from minorities of varying intersections, denial of our history for political efficacy, targeting of law enforcement during coronavirus, kind of just to name a few. Our experiences in post-Holocaust West are still white experiences in the context of Black narratives. So that was kind of the tone during April and May when I was building this collection. The tone in the past few weeks when I've been preparing for these talks drastically changed with the sudden rise of anti-Semitism, especially in digital spaces, over the past 3 weeks. And I must admit that preparing for my live streams this week as well, and also for the digital presentation of Capsule for some days has felt like trudging through quicksand. So kind of, I've had to ask myself kind of why is identity inextricably linked with sustainability? So we as a collective society are becoming aware that climate change affects the global South disproportionately in terms of environmental racism. So we see this with the hashtag pay up movement, where we're starting to call out huge money brands like Kylie Jenner, Pretty Little Thing, Boohoo, H&M, Zara, Gap for failing to pay their garment workers in Asia and provide production and supply chain transparency. Um, we see this with the women in Kalimantan market in Accra, Ghana, selling the secondhand clothes that come directly from the West in their secondhand markets, and being paid absolutely nothing to move these clothes back and forth between the markets and the landfills. The public has also learned in the past few days that the Uyghur Muslims subjected to forced labor in Chinese prison camps produce 1 in 5 cotton products worldwide, alongside the myriad of atrocities being committed against the Uyghur population by the Chinese government. So thinking about accountability for environmental racism for garment workers in the global south means that leaders of large fashion corporations essentially, it does mean that we must produce less, produce better, and produce locally. And essentially, leaders of large fashion corporations must take home less pay in exchange for ethical labor. Failing to hold businesses accountable for ethical production essentially guarantees climate destruction and destruction of global health. Where does this play in with Jewishness? Anti-Semitism is unique in that it crosses all political parties. It's an utter mistake to attribute this to one political party or the other. What worries me about climate change regarding Jewish people in the global north is that we can trace patterns of blaming Jews amongst blaming many racial, ethnic, and sexual minorities for income inequality and general social unrest and general social lack. And climate change will unfortunately bring just that. It will absolutely bring even more social unrest and difficulty of access to the basics than is present today. So looking back at Jewish history of oppression, which is characterized by, sort of waves of expulsion, humiliation, or God forbid, murder every 50 to 100 years. We see it in the current ethnic cleansing of the Jews in Yemen. We saw it in the Holocaust. We saw it in the pogroms by the Cossacks in the Soviet Union, the Dreyfus Affair, the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal, the Crusades, and kind of the general systemic repression of Jewish people in the way of second-class citizenship, sort of, denial of right to practice many professions by Europe prior to the outbreak of World War II. We see a common thread of this kind of societal angst that seeks simple answers for very, very complicated problems, and we see it persist. And it's in this kind of situation that physical and rhetorical violence towards Jews and other minorities festers, and silence towards injustice thrives. So I really, really believe that education is the most powerful, sustainable, and effective tool for ending racial and environmental injustice. I think that we absolutely must use access to crowdsourced information and transparency of information for the good. I think we must never use it to deny another person's narrative in this new world we're living in. So that's a bit sort of my sort of stream of consciousness about Capsule, about the environment in which it was created, kind of about the goals of the collection that arose before the pandemic, before Black Lives Matter, and post. I really hope you guys can see the show. I'm just going to check quickly if we've got any shows. No, I think we're all right. Yeah, I think we're all right. And I feel like I've stuck to time okay. So yeah, all right. So thank you all for tuning in. I really, really appreciate your time and attention. I hope that you guys can tune in for the presentation of Capsule. I will keep posted as to when it will be commercially available. It will be available on a pre-order basis. It won't be available. Basically, it'll be produced on a demand basis. So those updates will be coming. But I can't thank everyone enough for your time. I hope everyone has a lovely weekend. Take care.